Have you ever noticed how loud hype is, but how quiet longevity is? The loudest people in the industry aren't always the ones still here 5 years later. The loudest brands aren't always the ones artists trust long term. And the loudest promises aren't always the ones that actually deliver. Because hype is designed to capture attention. But longevity is earned through consistency, integrity, and time. And if you're building a business right now, especially in a slower season, this distinction will determine whether you burn out or whether you're still standing years from now. Today, I want to talk about what it really takes to build something that lasts, not just in your lash career, but in who you become as an entrepreneur. Welcome to Behind the Lash with Tammy, where we talk about the real stories behind building a beauty business, the decisions, the lessons, and the mindset that shape not just your career, but who you become in the process. I'm Tammy, founder of Beauty by Tammy, and this podcast is where I share what I've learned over a decade as a lash artist, educator, and product creator. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to say thank you for your patience. I took a little time to recover from being sick, and I'm really grateful to be back here with you. One thing I wish more people talk about is how invisible longevity can feel while it's happening. When you're improving your skills, refining your systems, raising your standards, those changes don't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it just looks like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Meanwhile, the industry keeps moving. New brands appear. New techniques trend. New artists gain attention quickly. And if you're not grounded in your own vision, those moments can make you question yourself. You start wondering, am I moving too slowly? Am I missing something? But what I've learned is that longevity rarely looks impressive in real time. It only becomes obvious in hindsight. I remember there was a period where I was spending a lot of time refining my adhesives, testing, adjusting, trying to get the consistency right. And from the outside, nothing really looked different. There wasn't a big launch yet, no visible change. And I remember thinking to myself, is this even moving things forward? But looking back now, that was actually one of the most important phases because that's where the foundation was being built. When I first started researching into my adhesives, I knew I wanted to create something that could last through all 4 seasons of change here in Canada. I struggled so much as a baby lash artist because I felt that there was this void in the market. You have to remember back then, 10 years ago, we were not working with the best adhesives. Most of the adhesives that were in the market required a lot of humidity to work. And I was never taught about humidity and temperature in the beginning. So I really struggled in the beginning, thinking it was my fault, when really I just didn't understand how adhesives work. The adhesives I was working with at the time were not as adaptable as they are now. I knew that I could create a product that could meet the needs of lash artists, especially those who work in a 4-season country like I did. So the beginning was a lot of researching and refining and a lot of time spent on where I could get the best raw ingredients to create an adhesive that would work consistently in very extreme environments and different conditions. The beauty industry rewards attention, but clients reward trust. And those are 2 very different things. Attention can happen quickly. A technique goes viral, a new product launches with big marketing, a new artist grows fast on social media. But trust builds differently. Trust is built through consistency, through reliability, through showing up the same way over and over again. Clients may not understand the technical side of lash artistry, but they understand when something works. They understand when their lashes last. They understand when they can rely on their artist. I've had clients who didn't know anything about adhesives or humidity or technique, but they would come back and say, whatever you're doing, Tammy, it just works. My lashes last every time. And that's when it really clicked for me. They don't need me to understand the details. They just need to trust the results. And that's what builds loyalty. I was never bad at doing lashes. It took me about 2 years to go from a beginner and I was okay to a great lash artist. I always teach my students when they first walk into my class that lashes are very, very simple. Clients want lashes that bring out their eyes, that are suitable for them, that are safe at a price that they're willing to pay. It's really that simple. And when I was able to guarantee retention, that means that I was going to be able to create the same style for my client with lashes that would last every single appointment. That's when the trajectory of my business changed. That's when I became fully booked. That's when I became the lash artist in my area that my clients would help me spread word of mouth. This is the lash artist you want to go to. Because even though I was charging a more premium price point, the clients I was attracting were women who appreciated quality, who were very busy, who had careers, and they just could not take the risk of coming in for a lash appointment and wondering, is my look going to fall apart this time? Are my lashes going to all fall off the next week? They just couldn't take that risk. They had careers and they had jobs that required them to look good. Of course, they wanted to look good for themselves for personal reasons too, but they really were so busy in their careers that they could not take that risk that, well, the lashes didn't last. I'm going to have to come in and get them fixed. They literally didn't even have time to get their lashes fixed. So it's not even an issue of, can you offer to fix the lashes? You shouldn't have to fix lashes. If you get it right the first time, every single appointment, you have nothing to worry about. Clients will find you. You will quickly fill up your books because you're able to guarantee that retention every single time. When I started developing my own adhesives, I wasn't trying to create something flashy. I was trying to solve a problem I had experienced as a lash artist. Too many products were inconsistent. Too many brands were focused on marketing instead of performance. I remember using an adhesive that worked perfectly one day, and then the next day, in what felt like the same conditions, it just didn't perform the same way. And as an artist, that's such a frustrating feeling because your work depends on it. As a baby lash artist, as a beginner, I didn't understand the technical aspects of the adhesive and what it needed to perform consistently. So I just blamed myself. I was buying every single big brand to try, and it always just performed great on some days and didn't perform well on other days. I couldn't understand. I just kept blaming myself. I thought it was my technique. I thought it was something I did wrong in the appointment. And that's when I realized something important. Consistency isn't a luxury for artists. It's the foundation of your work. And honestly, passion and vision adhesives came from that frustration, from wanting something artists could rely on every single day, not just something that sounded impressive in marketing. Because artists don't need more noise. They need tools they can trust. I experienced firsthand the frustration of not being able to depend on my adhesive. That's when I had that light bulb moment. Lash artists like me need a product, need an adhesive that is going to work no matter what. It is going to need to be able to be flexible enough to adjust to many different working conditions and still be reliable as long as we gave it the perfect environment that they needed to work in. And that's why I set out to create a better product that was consistent and showed up for us so that you can have the confidence in your adhesive every day that you go to work. And interestingly, this idea of playing the long game didn't just shape how I built my brand. It shaped who I had to become as a person. I'll talk more about that in the final episode of this season. Playing the long game requires something most people don't expect: emotional discipline, because there will always be moments where something else looks like it's moving faster. Someone else seems to be growing quicker. Another brand is louder. There were definitely moments where I saw other brands growing quickly or doing things differently, and you start to wonder if you should be doing the same. But if you react emotionally to every shift in the industry, you'll never build stability. Longevity requires staying focused on what actually matters: your standards, your relationships with clients, the quality of the work you produce every day. I remember during the pandemic, so many Johnny come latelys, or should we call Jane come latelys, were popping up everywhere and calling themselves lash artists, because at the time we had predatory, I'm going to use lash educators in air quotes, because I questioned the integrity of these lash educators. They were offering online courses during the pandemic because we had to stay home. Everybody had to hunker down. We had multiple closures and lockdowns in our area, in our city here in Canada. And so nobody was allowed to go out. And I get it. But that really increased all these online courses. Everybody was trying to learn new skills or take new courses, which I'm all for getting better education, of course. But lashes is not something that you can learn online. It's okay to learn the theory online, like the history of lash extensions, even health and safety, the lash cycles, and how long it takes for a full lash cycle to complete and the shedding process and things like that. You can definitely learn theory online. When it comes to applying eyelash extensions, you are so close to the eyes, you are using sharp tools, and often you're applying with micro movements. Tiny micro movements, which requires complete control over your hands and your fingers. You need an expert, a teacher who is going to look over your shoulder and watch how you apply the lashes, even the way you dip the glue. These little micro changes will affect the safety of how you apply the lashes. You need someone to oversee your work, and that is not something that you can accomplish through just an online course. I'm a big believer in in-person courses. I'm a huge supporter of higher education and greater education. So I've always been advocating for potential students to research your lash educator, research the beauty school or the lash academy that you are investing your hard-earned money with, because these people who are offering just online courses, they don't really care about the health and safety of your future clients, and therefore affecting the bottom line of your business. Because if you cannot guarantee the health and safety of your clients, you really shouldn't be working on anybody, and definitely shouldn't be in business. And you will get in trouble one day if you make a mistake and hurt a client or do something to their eyes where you could be held liable. I do not support these online courses. I saw so many lash artists at that time come out in the industry and call themselves lash artists, creating really bad work and giving the lash industry a bad reputation. I saw the work being posted online and in social media, and people were bald or had bald spots. Clients were complaining about bad work. One horror story was that a client had gone to a nail salon and they had applied eyelash extensions on the one eye with regular eyelash extension glue, but on the other eye they had used nail glue and somehow blinded the client. These are just horror stories that were coming up in the industry, and I was extremely concerned. At that time, there were a lot of lash artists coming out saying that they were lash artists because they got certified online. I do not believe in that. I knew that playing the long game is what I needed to focus on. Just because people are doing things quickly doesn't mean that they're doing it right. If you're listening right now and your business feels slow or uncertain, ask yourself one question. Am I building something for attention, or am I building something that can last? There was actually a moment in my journey where I seriously questioned whether everything I was building was going to work. And interestingly, that moment ended up shaping the entire direction of Beauty by Tammy. I'll share that story in the final episode of this season. This is something I didn't fully understand in the beginning. Longevity doesn't just build your business, it builds you. It teaches patience. It teaches resilience. It teaches you to trust your instincts. I think earlier in my career, I would second guess myself more or look for reassurance from outside opinions. And over time, that shifted into trusting my own judgment. And eventually, you stop chasing validation because you're no longer building your business to impress people. You're building something that reflects who you are, your standards, your values, your vision. I would say in our industry, there's so much noise. There's big brands, micro brands, and then everything in between. I would say my advice would be to follow one or two people in the industry that you look up to, that you respect their business and what they stand for, and then focus on aspiring to achieving the standards that they do. I wouldn't just turn to every trendy company at the moment that seems to be doing well. You're constantly going to be chasing trends. I would really impress upon you to think about who you're following, because if I wouldn't trade places with this person, why would I take their advice? That's the standard that I always hold myself up to. There's only a couple of brands and people that I really respect in the industry. In the back of my mind, I respect how they built the business with integrity. I do follow them and I respect them, and kudos to them for achieving the success that they have. I tend not to fall into the trap of following who's trendy. Time will tell and time will show what your standards and your values are. I would rather stay back and just let my reputation defend itself when people get to know me over time and I am consistent in who I am as a person and as a business. Because building Beauty by Tammy didn't just require products, it required becoming a completely different version of myself. Someone stronger, more confident, more certain about the vision I wanted to create. And in the final episode of this season, I'm going to share something much more personal, not the strategies behind building the brand, but who I had to become in order to build it. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to follow the show and leave a rating or review. It helps more artists and entrepreneurs discover Behind the Lash with Tammy and supports the growth of this podcast. And if you want to explore the products I created for artists who value consistency and standards, you can visit beautybytammy.ca and use code PODCAST for 10% off Passion and Vision adhesives. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the final episode of Season 1.